little while before morning on Sunday, April 22, 1990, a certain junior officer in the Nigerian Army, Major Gideon Orkar, made a radio broadcast in Lagos. The broadcast was a coup speech that denounced the regime of the head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida. However, Orkar and his co-conspirators would fail to depose Babangida after the coup was suppressed and eventually crushed around evening. But how did this popular coup fail? Who was Major Gideon Orkar? Who were his co-conspirators? Was it really a Gideon Orkar coup? We shall find out about these and more in this video. Born Gideon Orkar to the family of Levi Orkar Chi on October 4, 1952, Orkar was the 9th child of his father, who was a teacher of Tiv heritage in Apare village of Goa local government in Benue State. The young boy had his primary education at the village of Apare and Wadata. For his secondary education, Gideon Orkar attended Boys Secondary School, Gindiri, present-day Plateau State, and joined the Nigerian Army in 1972 as Cadet number 682 while he was taking his higher school certificate classes. Gideon Orkar started his officer cadet training at the Nigerian Defense Academy, Kaduna, with the 12th Regular Combatant Course and was commissioned in December 1974 as a second lieutenant, where he was subsequently posted to the Nigerian Army Armored Corps School at Ibadan. Orkar was a member of the directing staff of the Command and Staff College, Jaji, Kaduna State, as of the time of the April 22, 1990 coup d'etat. According to Major Gideon Orkar in his speech, persistent corruption, maladministration of Nigeria's economy, the assassinations of Dele Giwa, Major General Mama Vatsa and other officers on an attempted coup, and other violations of human rights led to the April 22, 1990 coup. Orkar went further to call the coup not just another coup, but a well-conceived, planned and executed revolution for the marginalized, oppressed and enslaved peoples of the Middle Belt and the South, with a view to freeing themselves and their children yet unborn from eternal slavery and colonization by a clique of the country. However, Orkar listed 3 primary objectives on why they decided to, according to him, oust the satanic Babangida administration. 1. To deter Babangida from installing himself as life president of Nigeria at all costs, which would retard the progress of the country forever. 2. To stop the domination and internal colonization of Nigeria by some privileged few. And 3. To lay a virile democratic foundation for the real Nigerian federalism. Lieutenant Colonel Gabriel Anthony Nyiam, the most senior officer involved in the rebellion, in a newspaper interview 10 years after the failed coup, said it was the alleged incompetency and atrocities of the military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, that was the main factor for the coup. Nyiam also added that the marginalization of the South, especially in the Nigerian National Petroleum Commission (NNPC), and a plethora of other unworthy events like the admission of Nigeria into the Organization of Islamic Council (OIC) and the later bomb assassination of investigative journalist Dele Giwa led to the failed rebellion. Now, the aim of the rebels was to have a temporary government that would conduct a proper national census, a proper election, and then set up a framework for a national conference. Nyiam also said in the interview that they didn't plan to govern anybody, but to restore power to the people through democracy. How would they do that? Well, he said there would be a caretaker committee which would be superintended by a former cabinet minister under President Shehu Usman Aliyu Shagari. Now, let us take a look at how the coup happened. At about 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, April 22, 1990, the famed Gideon Orkar coup began after the rebels had met for a final briefing at a civilian warehouse in Ikorodu, Lagos, which was owned by one great Ogboro. The briefing was directed by Major Saliba Mukoro, a military police officer with a doctorate in law. Mukoro was at the time the military assistant to the Director of Army Staff Duties and Plans (DASP), a position that was second only to the Chief of Army Staff at the Army headquarters. After the briefing, they trooped out to their various destinations in civilian transportation. They didn't rely on normal military transportation. Their first task was to secure weapons, and they were able to do this by taking control of the military police barracks at Apapa. They then arrested Colonels Ajiborisha and Odaro, who were transported to the Ojo cantonment where they were detained. Afterward, a subgroup headed for the FRCN radio station, some to Bonny Camp, and the others to Dodan Barracks, Ikeja, and Ojo cantonments, basically to get additional heavy caliber weapons and active duty soldiers in a bid to secure these locations. Lieutenant Okeku Matalu of 123 Infantry Battalion manned the radio station, which proved to be a walkover at first for Mukoro, Nyiam, and Captain Empere, who was a military police officer, who secured the use of one of the fully armored vehicles there. At the beginning of the operation, Lieutenant SOS Echendu reportedly grabbed an armored vehicle from the State House and drove to the radio station, which must have alerted Babangida's household. When he arrived at the station, Mukoro then sent him back to attack the Dodan Barracks. This attack led to the death of Babangida's aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Colonel Usman K. Bello. The attack on the Dodan Barracks was in two stages. First, most of the tanks deployed on the ground were technically demobilized via the removal of the firing pins. Second, the bombardment of Echendu on the main living quarters began. Before the bombardment, Babangida's ADC Bello came up to check what was going on. However, without backup, he tried to climb into one of the disabled tanks, and when he found out that the tank was in no use, he came out and tried walking alone in mufti toward the radio station, where he was shot and killed in unclear circumstances. Meanwhile, one Captain Kasim Omowa evacuated General Ibrahim Babangida through a secret channel to an undisclosed location in Lagos, where he remained for some days. Other accounts say he was smuggled via the Ribadu rear gate to the location where he made contact with Abacha and others. However, in a 2014 interview with Sahara reporters, Echendu said he saw Babangida escape in a Peugeot 504 vehicle but didn't want to kill him. When he was asked why he didn't kill Babangida, the officer replied that he wanted the head of state captured alive and tried for the crimes he had committed. Defense House, which was known as the Flagstaff House as of the time of the Gideon Orkar Coup in Ikoyi, Lagos, had in custom always been the official residence of the General Officer commanding Nigerian Army since the time of Major General Johnson T.U. Aguiyi-Ironsi and later the Chief of Army Staff. However, when Lieutenant General Sani Abacha added the title of Chairman Joint Chief of Staff to his army title, he stayed on to the residence. It was in this position Abacha was that the rebels struck in the early hours of the morning of Sunday, April 22, 1990. Now, Abacha rarely slept at night, but would go to a nearby guest house for recreational activities. Thus, when Lieutenant Henry Ogboru, a military police who was also at the time a law student at the University of Benin, led the rebels to Abacha's official residence, he was not available. They then did a follow-up check at the nearby guest house where they knew Abacha always lodged and proceeded to fire heavily at the guards and the building, but failed to do a mop-up of the house by searching each room. Their failure to conduct a room-to-room search was instrumental in saving the life of Sani Abacha, who was inside the guest house well and alive. This failure would also save the life of the Babangida regime and would lead to the ultimate failure of the coup. About 10 minutes after the rebels left, Abacha's first son, Ibrahim, reportedly drove in to find his father at the guest house. Abacha then calmly got dressed in a mufti and equipped himself with 2 Uzi submachine guns, handing one over to his son. He then ordered his son to drive the Peugeot 504 car while he, Abacha, sat at the right side front seat in addition to 2 security operatives who occupied the back seats. First, they visited the Flagstaff House where Abacha gave strict orders to secure the area. Then he began making phone calls to other service chiefs as the rebels had not cut off telephone lines nor had they disrupted nationwide army signals networks. After making calls to secure pledges of loyalty, Abacha then gave firm orders that the coup was to be resisted at all costs. As the news came that Sani Abacha and Ibrahim Babangida were still alive, galvanized by Orkar's speech on the strange and unusual expulsion of some far northern states on the radio, confidence was restored, and officers and units who would otherwise have been able to take a wait-and-see stance or maybe even run away tilted to the Babangida regime. Once armored vehicles at Ikeja were firmly under the control of the pro-Abacha elements, Brigadier Ishaya Bamaye retook the Ikeja cantonment and pushed to regain control of all other major military barracks in the Lagos area. The 126th Guard Infantry Battalion at Bone Camp under Lieutenant Colonel Gandhi Tola Zidon, the 9th Infantry Brigade under Bamayi, and the Reese unit at Ikeja were instrumental in retaking Dodan Barracks and the radio station, while some of the rebels were arrested and others escaped. With the coup definitely headed for failure, surrounded and isolated, Nyiam and Mukoro, the most senior officers involved, at first contemplated committing suicide. However, they escaped from the radio station and eventually left the country for exile in the United Kingdom and the United States, respectively. The civilian businessman, who was also alleged to be a key co-factor in the coup, Great Ogboru, also escaped to Europe as also a chendu to the United States. As a result of their escape, security agents detained and hounded the families of the rebels who escaped. In fact, Great Ogboru's brother, Tona Ogboru, who said he knew nothing about the coup, was jailed until the head of the interim national government, Chief Ernest Shonekan, pardoned him for release. However, before he could be released, Shonekan had resigned and General Abacha reversed the decision and refused to release him. Even though all the principal plotters were either based in the north, Jaji near Kaduna or Zaria, the April 22, 1990 plotters made no concrete plans and measures to neutralize units outside the federal capital of Lagos. Although, according to Nyiam, there was a leak and the coup process was escalated to avoid arrest. They had thought that once Babangida and Abacha were eliminated and the Lagos units were neutralized, the regime would collapse. Another major reason is that Captain Empere, who was a military police officer, reportedly took one of the armored vehicles his fellow rebels had secured from the radio station back to the Ikeja cantonment and used it to practically take over the cantonment. Empere allegedly shot at anything that moved until he ran out of fuel. However, his main mission, which was to secure control and neutralize the main battle tanks, failed, and is purported to be the primary reason the coup eventually failed, because Abacha would use those same battle tanks to fight them. Major Gideon Orkar was arrested along with about 300 other military personnel and more than 30 civilians. There were mass arrests, and some journalists considered critical to the Babangida regime were also detained. Even newspapers were closed. Subsequently, a military tribunal chaired by Major General Ike Nwachukwu was instituted, and Major Gideon Orkar with 41 others were convicted for treason and were all executed by firing squad on July 27, 1990. Some 9 others were jailed, while 31 soldiers were summarily acquitted. According to Human Rights Watch, the accused military men were not allowed to choose their own legal counsel and there was no judicial appeal. However, as the convicts were about to be shot, they alleged that those acquitted by the first tribunal were fellow rebels discharged on ethnic grounds. Therefore, the Armed Forces Ruling Council (AFRC) then ordered the retrial of 31 of the acquitted by a new tribunal headed by Major General Yohana Yerima Kure, and on September 13, 1990, 27 of the 31 were executed, bringing the total number to 69. The highest number in Nigerian history, which dwarfed the Dimka abortive coup of 1976, where 39 were executed after a trial. The putschists were not remorseful about the coup. In fact, Captain Empere was very bold and praised the late Major Isaac Adakaboro as his mentor and hero. Although the April 1990 coup is still popularly called the Gideon Orkar Coup, it was not led by the junior officer. He was only recruited into the plot just a few weeks before the coup. The planning and recruitment were done by Major Saliba Mukoro, a military police officer with a doctorate in law. Mukoro was at the time the military assistant to the Director of Army Staff Duties and Plans (DASP), a position that was second only to the Chief of Army Staff at the Army headquarters. So, why was it called the Gideon Orkar Coup? Well, as the spokesman for the rebels and the nation waking up to hear his voice over the radio enhancing his popularity, gave the coup its name. Orkar was also the most senior officer to have been executed, as Nyiam and Mukoro with 9 others had escaped. The Gideon Orkar coup of April 22, 1990 led to certain reactive measures by the military against the services, units or corps that were thought to have been deeply involved in it. Military police battalions were downsized. The coup also shook the northern hegemony to its very foundation that led to its creation of diverse northern bodies especially the Arewa Consultative Forum in 2000. One major obvious effect of the coup was the speedy movement of the federal capital from Lagos to Abuja in 1990 by the head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, which would disrupt the Abuja Master Plan. The coup, according to Echendu in his 2014 interview, stripped Babangida of his aura and he lost a considerable amount of self-confidence. Adversely, Babangida's diminuendo would lead to Abacha's crescendo, who would go on to be, unarguably, Nigeria's most brutal dictator. During their trials, Major Gideon Orkar and his fellow conspirators reportedly told the military tribunal that their coup was in 3 phases. The last phase was that unless all the junior officers were killed, there would be no hiding place for the Babangida regime. 2 years later, over 150 middle grade officers died in a C-130 plane crash in 1992. But that's a story for another day.